Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, welcome to another CIO East Africa webinar focused on the cloud in these pandemic times of ours. I hope you are well and the week has kicked off to a great start. As we all know, the cloud is a fundamental business working tool today. And in as much as some of us have already moved to the cloud, most of us are not fully in the cloud, and it's because of several issues, maybe trust issues. You're not comfortable with fully hosting your applications in the cloud. Maybe you're not comfortable with your staff or fellow colleagues working off the cloud. But with the current situation, we have no choice but be in the cloud because everybody has to access applications and business tools through the cloud, as we are all working from home and trying to keep safe. So today we do have two experts in the cloud business who will be speaking to us on how you should move fully to the cloud, how secure should you be, how much will it cost you, what are the steps that you must take in doing this. So we do have Nyimbi Odero. Nyimbi is from Nyimbi Inc., and he's a consultant in the technology space. And we do have Michael Michie, who's the CIO at Triple OK. These are two passionate technology lovers. And just like you, I am here to learn from them some of the exciting things they have to tell us about the cloud and how it has to be a way of life for us to survive. It's all about adaptability in this new pandemic period. So as usual, please post your questions in the Q&A tab. Post your comments in the public comments chat room. If you can't hear anything, if you're having an issue with technicalities, just let us know through the chat window. We have a poll that's running, so please look into the poll and answer those questions. And then Nyimbi has already shared his presentation in the public chat window. You can follow it there by clicking on the link, and it will download the presentation for you. To kick us off, I'll hand over to Nyimbi Odero, who will take us through his presentation. Thank you very much, and we look forward to an exciting 1 hour.
The first reason people move to the cloud is to get some of the economies of scale. So you want to share in... So cloud providers spend a lot of money, buy a lot of servers, and therefore their unit cost is substantially less. The second thing is that the rate at which you can scale is substantially faster in the cloud. These are the basic reasons. So you need a new server, it's a couple of clicks of a mouse, and you've got a new server deployed. Or you're looking for enhanced storage, you need another petabyte, it's a couple of clicks and it's done. So that ability to scale is a principal incentive to go to the cloud. But another reason is other than just the cost, the scalability and the security, which I'm sure Michi will address in somewhat greater depth, is the fact that they've got standby staff who ensure that the reliability is very high. So the way I'm going to structure this very brief talk, I'm afraid I'm looking at another screen, so if you see my head turning. So we've got 4 issues. Data domiciliation. This is a big thing in Kenya. There's a deep misunderstanding about what this means. What you're trying to do is not retain physical control of your data, it's to retain control of your data. So retaining control is different from the physical or geographic location of your data. So for instance, we are required by some rules to maintain our data in Kenya, and that limits the total number of people you can talk to. So if your data has to be in Kenya, it's got to be either on Google or Azure. Those are the two large companies in Kenya. If you needed compute, you want to be able to compare whether AWS, GCP, Azure, or DigitalOcean, or Linode even, gives you a better price. But I think in terms of data domiciliation and control, The key challenges that you've got to address are: one, in order to access your data, you need network. So if you're ever going to be in a position where your network is down, then you will not have access to your data. But you're more interested in whether your clients and customers have access to services and functionality, whether or not you're connected to the internet. And that, I think, fully addresses the data domiciliation issue. If you've still got doubts about that, well, when the church is open, you can try that again. So we've got 4 options. I'm on slide 3 of my deck. We've got the cloud as a backup, which is what, when you're very early in the game, you can consider, because instead of building a disaster recovery site some other place, you could quickly spin up a DR site on the cloud. And this is the lowest level of engagement with the cloud. When you're considering it as a backup, you've got the usual Dropbox, who can give you a petabyte if you're a large organization, or Box. But you've also got 2 tools that I'd like to pull to your attention. The first is rclone. So if at a personal level you need to back up your computer, you could go and pay Google Drive. Now I'm talking at a personal level. You could go and pay them $5 and they'll give you, I think, 5 terabytes or something, or some large number, and you could sync your computer or upload data using rclone. It works very well. Each of the words that I think needs looking into, I've put a link to. So you can go and take a look at rclone and SyncThing. And to try to give you, I can't cover all of the clouds and what it does, but you could go and have a look at this Amazon and Simple English link, which should tell you what is what. There are very few people who have got that link. So what I'll do, I think, again, is just send that to the public again, just so it's, if you have not seen it, you can go and look at that spec. The next level I wanted to talk about, so cloud as backup is the very lowest level of engagement. You can spare yourself the cost of hiring space or server space and buying equipment by just putting all your data in the cloud as your disaster recovery sites. Now, there are 2 methods of doing this. One, you could be doing tape backups, or you could use something like AWS S3, where it's going to cost you, I think, 3 US cents per gigabyte. What that means is that for 1,000 gigabytes, a terabyte, it's going to cost you, I think, $3. So even if you're doing your regular backups, what you can expect is that you might spend something around $2 to $3 a day, that's at the very lowest level of engagement, using it just for backup or as a disaster recovery, which I think is entirely affordable for any organization. And if you require multiple versioned backups, then it means it might go up to, I don't know, $4 or $5. So for some of the companies I work, so I participate in a group called the Trilogy Group. And what we do is we buy software companies, turn them around and move them to the cloud. And so in our portfolio, we've got an odd 200 companies now. And they're all on the cloud. And by and large, that's per month, Paul Kariuki was asking. So by and large, we find that for each of these companies, just for their disaster recovery, we invest approximately less than $100 per company. So in terms of cloud hosting, you've got, outside of using it just as a backup, you've also got the second option of essentially moving your servers to the cloud. This is, again, at the very lowest level of engagement. So you've got an insurance system, and you need to run it somewhere safe. You could just literally replicate your data center in the cloud. And what that would mean is that if you do a one-to-one mapping of your servers and then just pretty much replicate them to the cloud. This is the simplest thing to do. It's also the most expensive thing to do, but it is also not cloud native. It's not actually the way to do it. But in that regard, if you just needed to get a server on the cloud, if you're looking at Amazon, you might want to look at Amazon EC2. And I think we need to look here at EC2 instances. I'll put that up shortly so that you can see how that works. And what that'll do for you, it'll give you an idea of what it costs. In managing your costs on EC2, for instance, you want to take note of things called reserved instances. So if you know you're going to use a computer for a particular period, what you'll do is you'll get a 50% discount from what it costs if you can guarantee that you're going to use it for a particular period of time. So what you want to do is, if you can anticipate your compute requirements in advance, you want to go and use one of these reserved instances or guaranteed provisioning. It gives you between 50 and 60% discounts. So that's a very important thing to look at. How to actually use reserved instances or convertible reserved instances, or if you're going to use, depending on the sort of type of load you have, you could use what are called spot instances. So a spot instance is whenever there's free compute power, they sell it to you at a discount, but they can take it back at any time. So if you're doing things like graphic rendering or deeply compute intensive work, you'd use something like a spot instance. But in which regard, if you're looking at actually how you're going to store your data, you've got three options. You've got file storage. This is like your standard NFS, NTFS, and that sort of thing. You've got object storage, things like your AWS S3, and you've finally got block storage. What you will find, by and large, is that object storage is the cheapest. So as far as you can, try to avoid the file storage or the block storage and go for object storage. So of those three that you need to look at, I'll just highlight you should try to use that if you can. I won't talk about databases in the cloud. I'm sure you're happy to read about that. Let's talk about going cloud native. So when you have finally moved your workload to the cloud, you're still in charge of running your compute instances that are in the cloud. And what you're trying to do is you want to move away from self-managed services to managed services, so that it is somebody else's responsibility to ensure the continuity, security, and operations of your machines, so that you're not the person who has to actually reboot them. And to do that, we've moved from a hosted computer to a platform as a service, and we're now just very briefly going to talk about a function as a service. So instead of running your computer in the cloud, you can move to platform as a service where you're running your software in the cloud, but you can go an even higher level where you're actually running a bunch of functions in the cloud. So your software is made up of procedures and functions. So you can actually let somebody else run each of those individual functions. What this means is that the traditional bottlenecks that come about from how your software is architected or hosted essentially disappear. So This function as a service is slightly above containerization, right? So normally you'd put your database, your application, your front end in different containers, and these would scale up and down in based on demands. But now you can split it even further into microservices, each of which is a function. I can't go too much into that, but what I've done is I've put some links to things that you could look at in order for you to find out how to go about it. But all of this is all very well, but until you actually, your company makes this investment, I'd like you to look at slide 8 on my deck. How to actually experiment with some of this infrastructure at home. So I've put a list of things you should really take a look at, things like multipass, like Minikube, so that you can write Kubernetes on your laptop and spawn a bunch of containers and services. And it will work on your laptop if you've got 8 gigabytes, which I'm sure you do. If you're trying to design networks, please have a look at Frenetic. But if you, for the time being, until you grow into the cloud, Oracle is giving 2 free servers. I would strongly suggest go out and get 2 free servers off Oracle. Don't spam them. I mean, so you've got 2. They're not huge, but they're yours for free forever. So you can move away from DigitalOcean or Linode or wherever else it was. And MailChimp gives you a free domain name, and you can send out 10,000 emails for free. So it is worth looking at. And there's a bunch of free stuff. So if you're a startup, you could actually get enough compute resources to run your startup for a couple of years before you scale, pretty much for free. So please explore that. And I'm going to give up my time about now. Thanks.
Hi guys, my name is Michael Meshe. I am in charge of the ICT department at OK Law. And as per the COVID rules, I'm letting my hair grow. So on to the presentation. I hope you can all see my slide. So we're just going to focus on the threat landscape as a result of the change to the cloud, which has been mostly for most organizations is a new push that's been driven by COVID-19. So essentially, as people were mandated or instructed to work from home, organizations had to make a lot of changes in terms of how will staff access certain information, how do they get access to resources. So some resources were maybe too sensitive to be moved to cloud, and then access had to be given through some sort of connection back to the physical infrastructure, the office. Some it was better to scale up because of the high demand that would be put on these servers, and so the resources and the data was moved to cloud. Traditionally, what we have here is the castle and moat mentality, which has been the approach which has been used, especially for those enterprises and organizations which value storing everything inside their own. Those who love storing their data and their resources within their perimeter. And the problem with this mentality is one, you only care about defending the perimeter. Once your moat is deep and wide enough, you are safe. Anyone who's inside the castle is essentially treated as an ally or someone who should be there, which makes it quite easy for for attackers to spread across your entire network, because once they are in, there are no safeguards to detect or to catch any malicious actions. Just assumed they should be here, and that let them do what they need to do. So those changes eventually now, what changes are we looking at now that we are working from home? So we basically took bring your own device and just flip it on its head. And now we have one thing organizations are doing is take your device home. So at this stage is where now you're issued with your whatever company device you had within the office, you have to take it home with you and put it on your own home network, and then access your company resources from there. Of course, the questions come in now. This network isn't trusted, and you're not the only. It's not only that that company device won't be the only device on that network. That network has maybe your TV, other laptops, computers, smart devices, your mobile phones, and I don't think have invested in firewalls into our homes. So in terms of just how that network is protected is quite low, and that is one of the risks. One way which this has been taken care of is to introduce programs which communicate to cloud applications for security purposes, which most anti-malware and antivirus companies are already offering on their endpoint solutions. The question with take your device home, the one question that must be asked is just how to keep these devices secure in an untrusted network. And even when these devices have not connected for maybe 10, 15 days, for whatever reason, when they come back up online, before they connect to any organizational resource, can they first receive the proper updates, whether it's virus signatures, whether it's an update on the anti-malware, an update on any endpoint that you are running, any agents, or even if it's a Windows update before they connect. One other, we have the use of personal networks and devices. There are those organizations which necessarily couldn't give you the office devices to go back with them home. So next, the next option is to just let you use whichever device, and this is the fastest approach. So organizations don't risk the loss or damage of their devices. They just tell you, we'll give you access to the office, and then from there, we'll give you access to office resources. Use your phone, use your laptop, use your home Wi-Fi connection, whatever it is that you have to use. So questions, of course, is how. First of all, this is the device is unknown, coming from an unknown network. How do you secure what's unknown, and how do you approach that, the issue of trust? So for that, you can look at what we call zero trust. So it's a methodology where no device at any point can be trusted within or from within a network or outside a network until it proves through some form of authentication that it is assigned to a trusted user. Then that device is then given access. Now, controls here may be limited because the user may be authenticated, but the device may already be compromised, maybe because it already didn't have any protection and it was able to be infected. So it's also a 50-50, but it is a stronger approach, especially because now even whatever is in your castle is also being constantly watched. So then the other new threat that we're looking at from people working from home because of cloud solutions is the psychological habits. One thing we have, and I think we've all practiced this, and as you can see from the screen, I'm not dressed for the office. I'm quite relaxed being at home. And then that also spills over to how we work. As you can see with the two images over there, none of those two home setups are suited for something you'd see in your office, and they carry a certain mentality with them where we can look at the bottom image and say, as long as the devices keep powered on, that's fine. I probably don't want to shut down or do any updates. When you look at the one at the top, it's aesthetics which matter. So I really don't want to bog my machine with too many security provisions of the sort. Another challenge we have with the psychological habits we have at home is that there's a lot of sharing of devices. So you have your device that's being used by multiple people at home, whether you're giving it to your kids for them to do their e-learning, and then the device comes back to you for you to access your work material. So at that stage, when you are not the user assigned, you're not the user accessing the device, you're completely unaware of either links or malware that may come into this device. And then just a brief overview of sort of the new threats we're getting now that we are shifting quite a lot in towards cloud. We have baited malware. So this baited malware is mostly through news feeds and apparent e-learning platforms, which try to capture the essence and the need that we have for getting more information or keeping up with learning during this period of the pandemic. We have increased phishing. You receive lots of emails telling you that X and Y companies can offer webinar solutions, cloud solutions, contact centers which run on the cloud. Also, impersonation emails are also on the increase as part of these phishing attempts. Then secured hacks, which we've discussed and which you could expect zero. Then you have ransomware. Just recently, I think today, there are 2 new signatures for ransomwares that were released, which apparently now targeting devices at home because of the poor lack of security as compared to a device when it's on the corporate network. We also have data collection. We have a lot of services which have come up for free, which basically are requesting you to hand over certain information to access free resources. And this information tends to be on the bloated end, where you're asked for more than you should be able to provide just to access these resources. We have data mining. Of course, poorly configured cloud infrastructures would fall victim to data mining, and it will be quite easy for attackers to collect a lot of data. One of the biggest challenges that's going to pop out is now what we call shadow IT, where as all these users have taken they've taken either these devices at home or they're using their own personal devices. The troubleshooting is all being done from at home as I see fit for myself. So IT departments in infrastructure, security, and support lose visibility of changes made to these devices. The other one is deep fakes, whether it's going to be from news bites, either audios or videos, which would be used as a form of threat to change the landscape of countries, economies, businesses. We have identity theft, which has surprisingly grown quite large, especially with now the introduction of minors. A large number of details for minors have now been put online. So this form of identity theft, because your identity as a minor, you don't have a national identity, makes it more valuable, because now I can take details of a minor and register for services, as opposed to stealing someone's identity and then trying to gain access to that service. So this has also proved to be quite a big challenge. Unauthorized access, this is quite easily done through our home routers, which still have the default usernames and passwords. And I think there was a list, which I don't know if it's still active, but it was active on some Telegram page for how Safaricom does the naming for your routers and passwords. So that just shows the extent of which now the new threats are coming up within this landscape. That would be my slide, so I'll take any questions.